Everybody knows that Dutch is the leader of the Van der Linde gang. His name is on it. He makes the plans, and for years, people follow him without question. But by the time the gang reaches Beaver Hollow,
Dutch, think.
Dutch, be practical now.
Arthur is standing across from him, and suddenly that hierarchy doesn't feel nearly as simple anymore. So somewhere along the way, something shifted. Wait, so when everything starts falling apart, who are these people actually following? Great question. If you told Arthur Morgan that he was going to end up as one of the most important people in the Van der Linde gang, he'd probably look at you like you were stupid, and then he'll tell you to go ask Dutch, because that's how Arthur sees this whole thing. Dutch is the leader, Hosea is the brains, and Arthur is the guy you send when somebody needs to get shot, rescued, threatened, robbed, or apparently brought back from the side of a frozen mountain because John decided to disappear again.
Never thought I'd say this, but good to see you, Arthur Morgan.
You don't look so good.
I don't feel...
Thanks a lot, John. And that's what makes him interesting here. Arthur never really tries to build influence inside the gang. He just ends up with it. And just look at how many people depend on him before the story actually gets bad. Abigail needs something, she goes to Arthur. John gets himself in trouble, Arthur gets involved. Strauss has work, Dutch has work, Hosea wants backup, Charles wants help, Javier wants help. Half the gang is basically using Arthur as their emergency contact. And after a while that starts to mean something, because people already know how Arthur works. He might complain. He will probably complain, but if he says he's coming, he usually comes.
Pause.
If somebody gets left behind, Arthur is normally one of the first people going back. And that kind of consistency builds trust without Arthur ever having to ask for it. Like this man acts annoyed every single time somebody needs him. Meanwhile, he's accidentally building the strongest LinkedIn network in the entire Wild West. And the weird part is that Arthur's opinion of himself is way lower than the opinion most of the gang seem to have over him. Listen to him talk, and you just think he's a normal outlaw who's good at hurting people. But then you read his journal, and suddenly this supposedly simple brute is drawing flowers, writing about conversations he had 3 days ago, and having concerns about the people around him, and quietly questioning whether any of them are actually knowing what they're doing. Arthur pays attention, he just doesn't advertise it, which is probably part of why people feel comfortable around him in the first place. He isn't constantly trying to prove that he's the smartest person in the camp. He listens, and he notices things. And when something goes wrong, he's usually already involved before anyone starts talking about who should be responsible. But Arthur still doesn't see any of this as leadership. To him, he is doing what he's always done, and he's been doing it for a very long time. Arthur was still a kid when Dutch and Hosea took him in. And that's important, because Dutch didn't enter his life as some random gang boss Arthur chose to work for. Dutch was there while Arthur was growing up. He taught him how to survive, he gave him a place in the world, and eventually became the closest thing to Arthur. And eventually became the closest thing to Arthur. And eventually became the closest thing Arthur had to a father. So when Dutch makes a terrible decision and we're sitting behind the screen thinking, Arthur, bro, please use your fucking eyes. Something is clearly wrong here. We are then judging a relationship we've watched for a couple of hours. Arthur is judging a man he's trusted for more than 20 years. That's a completely different fight. And Dutch gave Arthur more than somewhere to sleep. He gave him a way to make sense of what they were doing. They aren't supposed to see themselves as random criminals stealing whatever they could get their hands on. Dutch talked about freedom, looking after their own, and staying away from the kind of people who controls everybody else. And Arthur believed enough of that to spend most of his life living by it. So even when he starts noticing cracks in Dutch, walking away from him means pulling at something much bigger than one bad plan. It means Arthur has to start asking whether the man who raised him still believes in the same things Arthur thought they were fighting for. And early Red Dead 2 makes it pretty easy to understand why. The gang has just escaped Blackwater after one of the worst disasters they ever had.
Well, first of all, you're gonna stay here, and you were gonna get yourself warm. Now, I sent John and Mike are scouting out ahead. Arthur and I, we're gonna ride out. See if we can find one of them. And this? Just for a short bit. And I don't see what other choice we have.
They've lost people. They're being hunted. Nobody has money. Half of them are freezing to death in the mountains. And Dutch is standing in front of this room, talking like he already knows they're going to survive. He doesn't sound unsure. He doesn't look around waiting for somebody else to decide what happens. He gives people jobs, tells them they'll get through it, and within minutes everybody is moving again. And listen, knowing everything I know about Dutch, if I was freezing my ass off in that cabin and this man started giving one of those speeches, I would probably believe him too. That's the part of Dutch that's easy to lose once you finish the game. We are so used to Chapter 6 Dutch screaming about faith and staring at Arthur like he's plotting a government coup. Going back to the beginning almost feels weird. People genuinely like him. They laugh around him and they listen when he talks. He sits with the gang, plays music, talks philosophy and celebrates their wins. And for a group of people who don't really fit anywhere else, that means a lot. Look at who Dutch has collected over the years. Arthur was a teenage criminal when Dutch and Hosea found him. John was another kid with nowhere stable to go. Tilly escaped the Foreman brothers. Javier was a fugitive. Bill had been thrown out of the army, and even people who arrived later were usually running for something or had already been pushed outside of normal society. And Dutch gives all of those people the same answer. Stay with us. You're one of us now. And once enough people believe that, the gang becomes more than a group of criminals. They have their own rules, their own language, their own little version of what the world is supposed to look like. And Dutch is smart enough to understand that people need more than money to stay loyal for 20 years. Money disappears constantly in this gang. If everybody was here only for the paycheck, half of them would have left after Blackwater. Dutch gives them a reason to believe their lifestyle means something. And some of what he says even has truth behind it. The world Arthur and Dutch grew up in really is disappearing underneath them, and Dutch takes all of that frustration and turns it into a philosophy the gang can live inside. And once you understand that, his speeches become much more important. Dutch talks constantly. Jesus Christ, does this man talk a lot. I mean, you could ask Dutch what time it is and somehow leave with a 15-minute long explanation about freedom. But those speeches are a part of his leadership. When things go wrong, Dutch gives the gang a way to interpret what happened without immediately losing hope. And for a while that works. But then the failures stop being occasional and they start becoming a pattern. Blackwater is already hanging over them when the game begins. Then, Valentine creates more heat. The Greys and Braithwaites play them harder than Dutch wants to admit. Sean gets killed. Jack gets taken, and every new place that was supposed to buy them time ends up creating another problem they have to run from. Dutch keeps doing the same thing, but he changes it. They just need one more move, one more score, one more place where they can finally breathe. And this is where Dutch starts sounding less like a leader with a plan and more like a guy who's been saying trust the process for 6 months straight. And then Saint Denis happens. Lenny is dead. The money is gone. And then Milton brings Hosea out into the streets.
Cut a deal!
I've given you enough chances.
No!
God damn it! There's your deal, Dutch.
And that is where Dutch loses more than just a gang member. He loses the one person who could consistently challenge him without threatening his position. Like, Arthur can question Dutch, John can question Dutch, Micah can flatter him, but Hosea could actually pull him back. And now he's gone. Thanks a lot, Dutch. Dutch spends the final chapters trying harder and harder to keep control of the gang. Because every person who leaves feels like another piece of his life's work disappearing. Arthur had already accepted that the gang is finished, they're cooked. And once he accepts that, his decisions become much clearer. He has John in front of him, John has Abigail and Jack waiting for him, and enough time left to make sure at least one family doesn't die with Dutch's dream. That's why Arthur giving John his head.
Now, I'll hold him off. It would mean a lot to me. Please. There ain't no more time for talk. Go.
Arthur!
Go to your family.
Arthur!
Get the hell out of here and be a goddamn man.
You're my brother.
I know. I know.
It's harder when you look at the story through leadership. Arthur spends most of his life being told where the gang was going. His final major decision is telling John to leave it behind completely. Dutch spent years trying to find a place where the gang could keep existing. Arthur eventually realizes John needs a life where it doesn't. Oh my god, this is B. Then Arthur ends up on that mountain. Dutch arrives. Micah is still there talking about money, plan, what can we do next, and Arthur can barely breathe anymore. So, if we're talking about the official leader of the Vandaliant gang, it's Dutch. He built it, he shaped what these people believed in, and he kept them together for years. But if we are asking who actually leads when that structure starts to collapse, Arthur slowly becomes impossible to ignore. He never takes command of the gang. He becomes the person making the decisions that give its people a future after it. And years later, John is standing at Beecher's Hope with Abigail and Jack because Arthur chose that future for him when there was almost nothing left to choose. So in the end, Dutch had the gang, Arthur had the people. And by the end of Red Dead Redemption 2, I know which one I would rather follow.